Hello, my name is Kyle Feingold, and I am Chief Inspiration Officer at Guiding Bright Minds and also founder of Results Learning. Most importantly, I'm an alumni of Denver Academy, and I'm so happy to be here with parents and teachers and everybody in the Denver Academy community. We did this last week, and unfortunately, we didn't get a recording. So I'm going to give you kind of a snapshot of what it is that we discussed. And like I said, in general, I'm just happy to be here. I graduated graduated from Denver Academy back when I had hair. And today, like I said, I'm founder of two different companies that really support out-of-the-box learners. When I think of out-of-the-box learners, I think about Denver Academy and my experience at Denver Academy. And my experience at Denver Academy was one where teachers really taught me my strengths, what I was good at, where my areas were for improvement, and how to use my strengths to be successful. Well, prior to coming to Denver Academy, of course, I was in elementary school. I started Denver Academy in my 6th grade year. In elementary school, by the time I reached 5th grade, I was 3 and 5 grade levels behind in all of my core subjects. And needless to say, I struggled. I didn't know what my strengths were. I didn't really feel valued as a person. All I knew is what didn't work, what I needed to do differently, and that I definitely didn't seem to fit in with everybody else. Not only were academics difficult for me, but socially, it was extraordinarily difficult for me as well. I mean, I'll never forget the time when I was outside at recess playing tetherball with a friend. And this girl who had a crush on forever in elementary school came up to me and asked me if I would be her boyfriend. I was like, what? She's asking me to be her boyfriend. I couldn't believe it was happening. So obviously I said yes. It was time to go inside. I went inside. I said, I'll see you later. All of a sudden, my chest was puffed up. I was standing tall. My head probably felt bigger than it ever had felt before. I wasn't sure I could walk down the hallway and get it in the door. But, I felt great. So this great thing had happened to me. We go to class. I sit down in class. We're sitting there for about 5 minutes or so. I look to the left. My new girlfriend, the girl of my dreams, was starting to pass me my first love note down the aisle. And as it comes down the aisle, I watch it come down slowly. I'm excited to see what the note's going to say. It gets to me, and I grab it, and I look around, make sure my teacher's not looking. I slowly, under my desk, I open the note very slowly to make sure my teacher doesn't hear. I look at the note, and it says, "The joke's on you. I would never be your girlfriend." So look, the struggle's real, socially and emotionally, and many of you may know, either from your experience growing up, from your child's experience, really what that means is neurotypical people have a difficult time understanding neurodiverse people. And we are out-of-the-box learners. We think more before breakfast sometimes than some people think all day long. Right? We have gifts and talents and strengths that if we surround and support these gifts and talents and strengths and harness them, we can be, and we are, the change makers. We are people that have a great impact on our world. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about executive functioning and how we can support our learners, our children, as they grow up, to really help support their executive functioning skills and make sure that they feel successful and have great confidence and self-esteem in who they are and who they're going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. As we get going, I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about the company that my wife and I founded just about a year and a half ago, or maybe a little bit less. But we founded Guiding Bright Minds, and really Guiding Bright Minds is one place where parents can go that are raising neurodiverse learners, that is out-of-the-box learners with ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, autism, and any other neurodiversity that kind of puts us outside of the box. And when parents come, when educators come, but particularly parents, come to our website. It's one place where you can find screened and vetted professionals that can help you along the way, like psychologists, tutors, coaches, therapists. And we're getting ready to add strength-based providers that really understand our kids, that do things like karate and welding and all the things our kids love to do that build our confidence and self-esteem. In addition, we connect you with others, similar to maybe the connections you have in the Denver Academy community, but we connect you to, and parents to, other parents who are going through similar journeys together. In addition, we educate. We strive to educate our parents in a way that makes sense. Through webinars every 2 weeks, through parent meetups, through research and articles and vlogs and blogs, all around the amazing kids that we're raising and how to best support our kids on their journey. So with that being said, I mentioned we're going to talk about executive functioning today. So let's start there. So executive function. I like to ask the question, what is executive functioning? I get several different answers, and normally I get things like, it's the ability to start something or finish something or organize, and absolutely it is. In general, what executive functioning is, it is the CEO of our brain. It is really the center, really the front of our brain actually, but the center of the place where our ability to set a goal and do whatever is necessary to achieve it happens. All right, so that's really what executive functioning is in a nutshell. It's the ability to set a goal and do whatever is necessary along the way to achieve it. Now, I like to break executive functioning down really into 2 categories: thinking skills and self-regulation skills. When we think about thinking skills, we think about things like prioritizing and sensing time. So, right, the ability to prioritize what we need to do from the start of a goal to the end. And that could be anything from, getting ready to play a video game and making a certain accomplishment, right? Or starting schoolwork or homework or something around the house, prioritizing, and then sensing the time that goes along with that, right? It's the ability to really feel 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. What does that feel like when I come down for breakfast and I only have 10 minutes to eat my breakfast and get out the door? And then we have organization. And yes, organization is physical organization, right? That's part of it. It's our locker, it's our backpack, it's our bedroom, right? How many of you have started to open your child's backpack and you kind of do it like this and you step back and you open it because you're just not sure what's going to pop out, the smell or whatever is in there, right? So it's that physical organization, but it's also the mental organization. How do we structure and organize our thoughts? How do we output those verbally and in writing? Okay, so organization, physical, mental, and verbal and written as well. And then we have working memory. And I want to emphasize working memory because this is one of the things that we ask our kids to use all of the time. And sometimes we stretch the capabilities that our students have at any given time. So working memory is our ability to basically hold on to information that comes in, just like I'm giving you now. So it's the first place new information comes in. You can hold information for 25 to 30 seconds, and you can hold about 3 to 5 pieces of information. And either you have to manipulate and do something with that information and move it to another part of the brain in order to retain that information. If you don't, it drops out of working memory after it gets 3 to 5 pieces of information or 25 to 30 seconds pass. All right, there's 2 kinds of working memory. There's verbal working memory. It's our ability to process everything coming in verbally. And then there's visual working memory, right? Our ability to process everything we see. So we'll talk more about that. And then we have metacognition and reflection. And that's our ability really, right, to sit back and go, what worked? What didn't work? Analyze what's coming up, analyze a situation, really, and change things so we're more successful the next time we do it. So those are what I like to think of, the 4 big thinking skills. And then we have kind of the 4 self-regulation skills. And it starts with task initiation, right? Our ability to start something, to get started. And I know many of you have probably been through a homework battle or two with your child, young or old, right? And part of the challenge is their ability to actually get the homework out and get it started, right? Or get something started that they don't like to do around your house. So it's that ability to just initiate and dive into the task. And then we have flexibility. It's our ability to think flexibly, to see more than just the black and the white, and also to be flexible in motion. So if we have a set schedule and we're following along that schedule, but something changes, can we be flexible and move along with that schedule? So it's that cognitive flexibility that allows us to navigate situations appropriately. And then we have emotional control. And emotional control is always a topic of conversation, but certainly since COVID, it has become a bigger one, not just for somebody that struggles with executive functioning, but everybody. And it is really our ability, right, to control our emotions in action. And it is okay. And I tell students all the time, you should have all these emotions, but it's the ability to deal with them appropriately in a way that in a way that shows your emotion, but allows you to appropriately process through and move through that emotion and deal with that emotion. And then we have our last skill, self-monitoring. And this skill has actually been proven to be the skill that kind of is equivalent to whether you're going to, or equates to whether you're going to be able to make and keep friends throughout your lifetime. So this is our ability to monitor ourselves in action, to read the room as a child or even an adult, right? We step back and we read the room and go, oh, we shouldn't yell right now because we're getting ready to sit down, right? So it's our ability to monitor ourselves in action. So those are really the two larger areas I like to think about when we think about executive function. There's actually 44 executive functioning subskills. But if we just think about our thinking skills and our self-regulation skills, it gives us a way to encapsulate that. So I want to make a differentiation. ADHD, right? What is ADHD? And many of you probably know this, but I'm just going to encapsulate it really quick. So ADHD is really three things. It's inattention, impulsivity, and or hyperactivity. So according to the DSM, ADD that many refer to or used to refer to is no longer. It is now ADHD inattentive type, right? So when we have inattention, it's our ability or lack of ability to be able to focus on something for a long period of time or gain attention in something that we're not interested in. That typically comes along with impulsivity, right? So that's the good old-fashioned ADD. That's now called ADHD inattentive type. And then we have ADHD hyperactive type. And that's kind of the type of ADHD that most people think about when they think about ADHD. It's that child that can't sit still, right? It's the person in back of you that keeps tapping their foot relentlessly through the entire presentation or the entire meeting, or tapping their pen on the table, right? And they can't sit still, they wiggle in the chair. That's that hyperactive piece. That typically comes along with impulsivity as well. And then there's the combined type, ADHD, the combined type, which is inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity all bundled into one. So again, we have three kinds of ADHD: our inattentive ADHD, our hyperactive ADHD, and our combined type ADHD. All right. So what I'd like to do now is I want to test your visual working memory. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is grab a piece of paper, grab something. If you have a piece of paper around, grab a piece of paper and a pen. And we're going to test our visual working memory. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a string of letters and numbers, and then I'm going to take that off the screen. I'm going to ask you to wait 5 seconds, and I'll cue you before you write it down, and then I'll say write it down. Okay, so the biggest trick to this, not trick, biggest rule to this is once I give you the sequence and remove it, don't write until I say. Okay, all right, you ready for your first sequence? Here we go. 23, 4, R, 13. Oh, I'm sorry, 24R, 24, 23, 4, R, 13. All right, now don't write it down yet. Okay, go ahead and write it down. All right. If you successfully wrote down 23 for R13, great job. This is an example of visual working memory, okay? I'm giving you a string of letters and numbers, asking you to hold on to it, and then bring it and write it back down. All right, so good job. We're gonna try this again. Are you ready? Here's your next string of numbers and letters. Go ahead and take a look. Please don't write yet. Okay, don't write yet, please. And go ahead and write it down. All right, I realize that this is definitely more difficult than the first one, right? So let's see how many of you were able to write this down correctly. If you wrote down 25Z14M2390Q, your visual working memory is amazing. Great job. If you didn't, don't feel bad. Most people didn't. All right, so that's visual working memory. So we're going to go over now, and we're going to try a little verbal working memory activity. So in this scenario, I'm going to dictate to you some letters and numbers. I'm going to ask you to pause before writing it down, just like we did this last time. And then when I give you the cue, I'm going to ask you to write it down. All right, so here's our first verbal working memory sequence. Okay, the first sequence is Q 427 Z 9. Don't write it down yet. Okay, go ahead and write it down. All right, let's go ahead and check it. If you got Q 427 Z and 9, great job. Nice verbal working memory. All right, we're going to make it just a little bit more complex this time. All right, this is our last exercise. The next one, are you ready? Pen up, don't write yet until I give you the cue. Your next sequence is 2K57H12R13 2. Don't write. All right, go ahead and write it down. All right, let's go ahead and check and see how you did. 2K57H12R13 and 2. If you wrote those down and you got them in order, impressive, so impressive. Most people, however, probably don't have this entire sequence written down. And if you do, you have some numbers and letters written in different spots than they should be. And that is okay, all right? That's verbal working memory. The one thing I want you to hold on to from this exercise is when you have a child who struggles with executive functioning, one of the impairments or the parts that are delayed is working memory, right? It's a visual and auditory working memory. And when we're in our house and we say something like, hey, son, will you go and run upstairs, brush your teeth, wash your face, get in your pajamas, grab a book, and I'll meet you up there in 15 minutes. What happens typically, right? Maybe the lights turned on. If you're lucky, they grab their toothbrush, and then nothing else probably is done when you come upstairs. So when we're dictating verbally, it's really, really hard to hold on to everything that's given verbally. So as you probably noticed, your visual working memory may be slightly stronger than your auditory. For students with or children with a deficit in executive functioning, this is a really, really difficult skill, and we ask our kids to use it all the time. So we'll talk about some strategies to support that here soon. But I hope you appreciate that simulation and kind of get the gist. Okay, so executive functioning skill development by age. In a nutshell, when you have a neurotypical brain, this is kind of how executive functioning develops. When we're 2, it's all about the here and the now, what we need. You know, I'm hungry, my diaper's wet. Whatever it is we need, it is in the moment. It happens then. Our executive functioning has really not yet started to develop. When we get to 4 years old, that impulsivity begins to improve just a little bit, where if we need something and we can read the room just a hair, we might be able to hold on to that until a little bit more appropriate time. And then we're able to follow a very simple string of 1 to 2 things, rules, right? Very simple string of rules. And then when we get to 6, our attention becomes better and we can solve simple problems with just a couple of steps. When we get to about 10 years old, our attention skills are more selective. We're more intentional with our attention skills, or we can be. And we're beginning to near maturity in our ability to not only attend, but identify relevant information in conversations, in reading material, in lectures, or in lessons, right? And then when we get to adolescent, we just throw it all out the window. No, I'm just kidding. It really does continue to develop, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. But basically that cognitive flexibility begins to firm up, right? We begin to be more flexible. So when something doesn't go the way that it was planned, we can just kind of go with the flow, right? Also, our decision-making skills, we start to hone those, and we can kind of start to see multiple step goals and what it takes to organize, prioritize, and manage our time from the beginning of a task to the end of that goal. All right. And then we get to our early 20s, our executive functioning fully develops. Typically, that frontal lobe where executive functioning sits develops first in females and a little bit later in our 20s for males. All right. So now, when you have ADHD, basically, there's some new research coming out that's kind of debunking a little bit, or trying to debunk that the relationship of ADHD and executive functioning deficit is 100%. So we used to think, and I still think it's pretty darn close, that 100% of students that have ADHD have a deficit of executive functioning. So there's some newer research coming out that's pushing against that a bit. But in general, we're going to go ahead and make that assumption for today's conversation. And we know that when you have an executive functioning deficit and ADHD, that there's a 30% rule. Dr. Russell Barkley introduced us to this. And I got to tell you, I see this a lot in kids, and I think it can be anywhere from like 20 to 50%. And the 30% rule, or the 20 to 50% that I referred to, is kind of the delay in the development of executive function. So if we look at Dr. Russell Barkley's interpretation of that, basically at age 7, your executive function, if you have ADHD, is impaired by 30%, and you're functioning at about a 5-year-old level. And then when we get to 12, your executive function is developed to about an 8.5-year-old. Right. And then when we turn 13, right, when we get into those all anticipated teenage years, right, if we're 30% behind, our executive functioning is in that range of a 9-year-old, right? And then when we get 16, when it's time to get that license, that executive function is just over 11 years old in its maturity, right? And so really, it's important to remember that when we have a delay in executive function, we need to really think about what our children can be successful at as it relates to executive function, and how we can support that executive functioning with tools and strategies to allow them to be independent and build that confidence and self-esteem and skills that they need to with some basic tools. All right. One of the tools that I really like is actually luggage tags. And I'm just going to give you a few different, strategies and tools for the next few minutes, but we really like luggage tags. One of the reasons why I like luggage tags is it kind of gives you a place to put a little insert in and write a list of maybe what should be in the backpack, or maybe what should be in the soccer bag or the drama bag, whatever it is. And you can kind of have that checklist. So one of the things that happens is now your child becomes more independent. You're not saying, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? You can go, hey, did you check your luggage tag, or did you check your checklist to make sure everything's in your bag? And then it's on them. And we know that sometimes they're going to be really successful, and sometimes they're going to forget to look at that luggage tag. But the more times we have repetition with that, the more successful they're going to become. So luggage tags are a great way to kind of build a little checklist of what should be in something or around something. All right. Here's 3 more that I really want you to think about. All right, wait time. Normally for us as adults, wait time, we don't like wait time, right? Like a doctor's appointment. Our doctor's appointment's at 11 o'clock. We get there 10 minutes early thinking if they can get us in right at 11, I can get out of there by 11:20 and move on with my day. Well, I showed up at 10 till 11 and the doctor didn't see me till 11:45. Wait time, man, right? And then wait time in traffic. Wait time is all over. And we don't like wait time. But as it relates to our kids with a deficit or a delay in executive function, we really need to think about wait time, right? When we give our children a command or ask them to do something, lots of times it kind of looks like this. Hey, son, will you go take out the trash, please, now? Hey, son, I asked you to go take out the trash. Son, and the voices start to ramp up, and all of a sudden we have an argument. Well, I'll tell you, I'll just give you an example, real life example. We see this with students all the time. My son, who's 8 years old, and this has been true with him since he was like 4 and still is. If I say, hey, son, it is time to go up and brush your teeth. Can you finish up that activity and go brush your teeth? And if I step back and I count to 25 slowly, chances are by the time I get to 25, he is ready to start moving in that direction. And I don't have to say it again. I can start to see motion that he's going to go upstairs and brush his teeth. But if I don't give that wait time, it can turn into a cadence and a sequence that nobody enjoys. So remember wait time. Also, when we're verbally asking our children to do something or students to do something, 1 to 2 things at a time, no more. And I know that can vary, right? If you have a 7 or 8 year old, or if you have a 15 or a 16 year old, I always suggest 1 or 2 things to start with, right? If they're successful with that 1 or 2 things, then maybe you can add on the 3rd thing. And if you add those on slowly, you're going to know kind of the limit of what that looks like based upon the development of their particular frontal lobe, that executive function. And then the last thing is visuals. Do whatever you can to support what you want your child to do in visuals, okay? So if you have a younger child, you might develop a morning routine, because right now getting your child out the door is a hassle. So if we develop a morning routine and we take pictures of our child doing everything, brushing their teeth, making making the bed, whatever it is that's in that sequence, and then we post it on a poster board in order, and we do this together with our child, it becomes their visual routine. Now you can say, hey, how you doing? What's the next step? As opposed to, did you brush your teeth yet? When you're older, you can do things like taking pictures in action, doing chores, right? Or doing a sequence of things that you're expected to do around the house. That could be a visual picture. It could also be just something in writing, but that makes that auditory instruction visual as well. So you can have both of those tools, visual and auditory, for your child to follow. Again, thinking about wait time, only 1 or 2 things at a time, and backing that up with something visual. All right. Task initiation. I love this quote. I leave homework to the last minute because I will be older and therefore wiser. All right, so we know initiation can be a challenge for a lot of our kids, especially if we're asking them, for example, to leave something they're really engaged in and they have interest in, and then we're asking them to go either do a chore or to do homework, something like that. So whether they're leaving something that they really like or whether they're just having trouble getting engaged, one of the things that we like to do is develop a self-starter. So a self-starter is 1 to 2 steps on how to get a task started. 1 to 2 steps. Okay, that's all. No more than 2 to begin with. 1 to 2 steps of how to get started. So in this example, this is simply how to get started on homework. Take out all my homework. And I might need to break that down into steps depending on my child, right? Get out the science book, get out the math book, but take out homework and open my planner. If I can do that, we are starting down the road of getting that task moving. So again, just short, something visual, a self-starter to help a child get started with a routine. One more strategy for you as we kind of begin to wrap up here, and that's where before we wrap up, and that's called a whoop. This is really for those emotional control skills. What whoop does is if there is something that you do in your home as a parent or in your classroom as a teacher, and you know it triggers your child, put a whoop in place. Okay, so a whoop is a wish, an outcome, an obstacle, and a plan of action. And if we know that our kids get stuck and lose that emotional control with particular things, we can be proactive. And together we can put together a strategy called a whoop to help our children get out of the way they're feeling and get back to a place that they want to be. So, for example, we run a summer camp at Results Learning, an executive functioning summer camp, and we interview all the students that we take in. And we had a child who really got upset anytime she thought somebody was talking about her or she felt excluded. And she would just blow up, right? Her parents told us this in the initial interview. She agreed. And so we put together a whoop. And her wish in those circumstances is that her classmates weren't excluding her or weren't talking about her, right? Her outcome, she wanted to feel included and be able to move on and not get stuck. And her obstacle was that she just got so mad, right? Her plan of action, if this happened, as we put it together, was step one, she would go find a coach, one of her camp coaches. And then she would take a walk around the block or the building, and then take some deep breaths and come back ready to participate. Because we put this together, there was actually only one time that she actually needed to come get a coach during this 2-week period. So it really helped her, know there was a plan, think through independently, what can I do if I feel this way? And then if she needed support, she knew exactly what to do and how to get it. So that's a whoop. You can use that in your home for, any place your child gets stuck. Transitioning to homework, right? Transitioning to something they don't like, getting out of the house quickly, whatever it may be. A whoop is a great way to support that. And you parents, you can use a whoop too. Don't be afraid to use a whoop. We can all use whoops in times like this. All right. So one of the things that I want to debunk here is in 21 days, you can build a new habit or a skill, right? Many of us grew up and we heard that. Right? 21 days, that's all it takes. You can drop a bad habit and build a new one. Well, I got to tell you, I present to hundreds, I've presented to thousands of people. We were in a room once with probably about 300 people in the room. And I said, has anybody built a habit in 21 days? And one person raised their hand. And I don't have very many people raising their hand when I ask that question. And I said, sir, can you please share with us what habit that you built in 21 days? He said, well, he didn't say it had to be a good habit. The whole room, of course, laughed. And it's true, right? It's hard to do that, especially when you're trying to break a habit or something you innately do and build a tool or use a tool or a strategy. So we know that actually, with current research, it takes more, an average adult, 66 days with consistent repetitions in order to build a new habit that becomes automatic. We also know with students with exceptionalities or out-of-the-box learners, it can take up to 254 days or sometimes more, right? And if you think about it, there's 180 average days in the school year. All right, so you're talking, 365 days in a year. You're talking almost a year to build sometimes to build a skill so it becomes fluent. So we have to remember when we go up a mountain, right? It's not straight up. It's you go up, you twist, you turn, you might go down, and then you go back up. It's the same way in building a habit. So what I'm saying is if you've tried something new with your child that you guys agreed on that might be a good way to support executive function, um, maybe it was a routine or anything that was new in your home, and it didn't work after a week or two and you threw it away, maybe think about going back and think about the mountain, right? Some days it's going to work. Some days you're going uphill, and you might have 2 or 3 or 4 days you're going uphill. And then the next day you're going to take a big, sharp left turn, and then you're going to go downhill for 3 days. And then you're going to start to come back up. And you may need to make little tweaks in your strategy. But what I'm asking is lots of repetition and lots of patience as we go to build this new habit or skill so it becomes automatic, so your children can be more independent as it relates to that executive functioning development. All right. So I also want to mention that, research shows, there's some research out there that shows that the executive function will fully develop, potentially 30% late. But I'll tell you just from experience and my colleagues' experience in doing this for so long, that can be true. But we also see that, and I'll say this for myself, I have ADHD and dyslexia. And I'll say, I don't think my executive function has ever fully developed. And I see lots of amazing children and adults out there that do not have fully developed executive functioning skills. But if we have the right supports, we can be amazing. I mean, think about Sir Richard Branson. I don't know if you know Sir Richard Branson, but Sir Richard Branson was told, maybe like your kids, maybe like some of your children, that he wasn't bright and that he was going to amount to nothing by his teachers. He subsequently dropped out of high school, started a record company, just mailing records, a record mail company that failed, and then ultimately developed Virgin Records. He now is the only man on our planet that has $8 billion companies in 8 countries. Amazing, right? And then we have somebody like Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps used to drive his teachers crazy in class. And the only thing his mom could think to do is to find something active, so she threw him in a pool. And lo and behold, he found his gift in a pool. It helped him in the classroom. It helped him at home, and he found his gift. And 24, I think, Olympic gold medals later, we know Michael Phelps. And then there's somebody like Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg hated going to elementary school and did everything he could to avoid it because he was dyslexic and really struggled to read. And look, he changed the way we see television and cinema in particular. Look, you may have the next Steven Spielberg in your home. You may have somebody that not the whole world is not going to know their name. But I guarantee you, you have somebody in your house, in your classroom that is amazing. And if we can support their executive function as it develops and give them tools and strategies and confidence and self-esteem, they're going to be amazing. And they're going to be a change maker in their own right. So don't give up. These kids are amazing. You know that. Your kids are amazing. So let's work together. Let's build solid supports for executive function and help our children be incredible. Look, I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you to the Denver Academy community and Denver Academy itself for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me here at kylef@guidingbrightminds.com. There's my phone number as well. I'm happy to take a call, happy to advise. Also visit Guiding Bright Minds. Again, it's the one place where you can go to get everything you need on your journey to raising a neurodiverse learner. As a matter of fact, Denver Academy is part of our community and so many other wonderful service providers and strength-based organizations. So we look forward to seeing you at Guiding Bright Minds. And again, if there's anything I can do, anything I can answer, any questions you have, please reach out directly. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.